Well, it's been a minute. Much longer than a minute, but I'm just going to say it's a minute because that's the phrase. Anyway.
The top 10 playlists no one cares about but me!
Welcome back to the top 10 list no one cares about. I know originally I said I was going to do number 2 and number 1 in separate videos, but against better judgment of my own brain, I'm going to do them both in this video. I'll still be able to cover why they're so important to me and why they're great songs, but just have them in the same video. So let's get to it. Song number 2 is Where the Streets Have No Name by U2. Where the Streets Have No Name was on the album The Joshua Tree, originally recorded in the late 1980s and released in 1987 as a single, and then later with the album. What's cool is I didn't learn this till later as an adult, but the song actually was based on Bono, the lead singer and the writer of this song, about how in a place where he went, you could tell by what street people were on, what their income was or what religion they were. And he didn't really like that. He thought, we shouldn't judge by just places and, stereotype. And so he wrote the songs kind of like, hey, where the streets have no name, where people can, just celebrate who they are and not have to be judged by where they live. In hindsight, first listening to it and then, as an adult, I'm like, that's really cool. This is the one song that was before my renaissance of really developing a love for music. Back when I was around 5, I lived in Orem, Utah. My mom and dad were finishing their degrees. My dad was getting ready to join the military and the Air Force. They would play music in the little 2-bedroom apartment we had. And back then it was tapes and CDs were just starting to come out. So it was most of the time tapes. There were several bands we'd go through. They'd go through Boston. They'd go through an artist named Seal. A lot of classic rock and some adult rock. Frequently remembering is listening to U2, specifically the album The Joshua Tree, Where the Streets Have No Name come from. And that was my first time listening to it, and I liked it. Like, even as fun, I'm like, oh, this is kind of cool. I like the beginning with the rock guitar arpeggios happening and echoing. Like, that was cool. When I was 11, 12, we were living in Alaska, and I was in my room, and I was like, oh, I kind of want some like background noise, because sometimes for me, I didn't find out till later about my ADHD, but having some sort of white noise in the background helps me kind of get things done. I asked my mom and dad what I could do. It's like, well, actually, we have this old, kind of stereo speaker thing. I'll put a picture up here, for reference. I had it, and I put it on, and one of the first ones was U2's album, The Joshua Tree. And so I turned it on, and when the song came on, I'm like, oh, I remember this song. And then I actually listened to the whole album through. I'm like, wow, that was really cool. But that song specifically was like, it hit different. I think it was the first song where I really caught myself, headbanging. Like, yeah, I want to run. I want to hide. Really like my body's moving with it. And I was like, wow, this is interesting, because I wasn't a guy who danced really. Might have flailed around, but And there was some other stuff I listened to, but this one specifically was like, hey, music's pretty cool. But the thing that hit me the most when I was a kid, when I was, starting to watch more movies as I was a preteen and a teen, was there's always some of those scenes where it shows like someone like, walking up a road, running up a road, a bike, a car, whatever. That shot where just something's coming at you and it's the beginning of a movie. I always thought this song would be kind of the perfect intro, like someone's like just walking up the street or driving, I want to run. But it got me in more on how important music is for visual media. It led me into being more kind of aware of that. And then also, as I started getting more into making my own videos, video production, knowing how important sound effects and music are in telling a story. And this song really kind of made that explode. Big deal of why this song's so important to me, because it was from the beginning of my life, but also has led to so many different things that I've done and enjoyed in my life and have these memories. And that is why that Where the Streets Have No Name from U2 is my number 2 most influential song in my life. Now for the number 1 most influential song. Woo! Sorry, I should have been more, not a ghost, but like, yeah, or something, or drum, or whatever. My number 1 song of this list is Time by Pink Floyd. Time is a very famous song and also a very favorite concept of us in our life here. Time is the third track on the album Dark Side of the Moon, which came out in 1973, which is one of the most sold and popular albums of all time. It was recorded by the band Pink Floyd in 1972, released in 74 as a single after the album was released the year before. The basis of the song comes from the lyricist and the bassist Roger Waters, who around this time was in his late 20s. They've had a few albums, but none of them like huge commercial success. He was just thinking about time passing him by. For him, thinking more about life is something that you just do. You start living it, and you don't just wait for time to happen. Oh, I'm going to wait for the cool thing to happen. It's just live it. Kind of grab the reins and hold on instead of letting it pass you by. And so this whole song is kind of about that idea, that concept of how sometimes we wait for something to start instead of just living our life. And it starts off with a really cool effect where they have tons of different antique clocks in this area, all kind of chimed up and ready to go off at the same time to be like a huge alarm, which, just so you know, if you want a good alarm to wake up in the morning, the beginning of this song does it right. Then it leads into an awesome drum part by the drummer Nick Mason. And then it leads into, the song, guitar, everything. And it's just really ethereal. The whole concept of it and just the sound is amazing altogether. The reason this is the number one song that's most influential for my life is it basically was the catalyst for my musical renaissance. But basically for a lot of my hobbies, how I express myself, and sometimes even think because of listening to this song and what came from that. I was 14. I was listening to some punk rock, something. My dad, was walking by the computer and he said, "Hey, I really want you to listen to this." And I said, "What is it?" And he said, "It's an album called Dark Side of the Moon by a band called Pink Floyd." When I first heard Pink Floyd, I really thought it was some frilly poppy thing from the 70s or 80s, maybe disco, whatever. Little did I know. I said, "Well, what's on the album? What is it?" Like, "Well, it's classic rock. I think you'll like it." He said, "The only thing I want you to do is listen to it from the beginning to end without stopping. So you need about 45 to 50 minutes. And I go, "Okay, that's interesting. I've never done that before. I listened to songs on an album, not all the way through as an experience." I said, "Why?" And he's like, "Just listen, you'll find out why." My dad knew something. I didn't. So I listened to the first two songs. First one is kind of the intro to the whole album, kind of gets things set. The second one is a song where they really started beginning of experimenting with synthesizers and different ways to make those sounds happen. Then it was an instrumental track, and I thought that was really interesting. But then as it led into number 3, which is Time, and that song, I really was hooked. Because every song after that, it would fade in and fade out. And this type of album is called a progressive rock album. It tells kind of a full story. It can be about a specific person, like a story, or just story of life. And each song felt like it was all connected. At one point, I went to my dad. I paused and I'm like, "Dad, is this all one song?" He's like, "No, it's the album. It's how they made it." And I'm like, "Oh." And so then I listened to the whole thing and I was blown away. I was like, "This is amazing. This is more than just music." It was an expression of life, really, without trying to be too cheesy. I got more into Pink Floyd. I really got into Rush. I got into a lot more progressive music that was more than just songs. And of course, I got into other music that was more traditional. I went to different stuff. I really got into all sorts of music because of this album. That's the reason why it's the number one. It was something that led to me finding a love for music, not just listening, but singing, playing instruments, recording. It led to me of kind of more about my own personal self, what my personality was, things I believed in, my beliefs, how I related to my friends, and how I pursued hobbies and interests. It might seem a little cliche, but this song was a big point of where I was like, there's a lot out there that I have just kind of not really paid attention to. While it's not my favorite Pink Floyd song, it is definitely the most influential one of my life anyway. I know everyone talks about this song saved my life, or this song was a huge part of my life. This song really was a catalyst to other things I've done in my life. My life would probably be a lot different if I didn't listen to this album. One thing that I love, the perspective of why this album is so great, is the lead guitarist and lead singer, David Gilmour, said in a documentary about Dark Side of the Moon how he wished he could have been a person that put on the headphones and could listen to the album front to back without thinking about all the takes and things he had to do to get it to that point. That's very interesting to be able to think. If you make music or do something in your life, you'll know about all the hardships you had, all the little things that happen, but to someone that doesn't know and they get to see your product, whatever it is, they get to see the full picture of the time you put in. And that's really cool. I got to see David Gilmour live in Chicago during his last album tour of Rattle That Lock. It was awesome. I've seen many recorded Pink Floyd concerts, but being able to be at that one, even though it wasn't the full band, it was an experience. Visually, musically, it was awesome. I was so glad I was able to see that. With that experience, it kind of solidified why this song is so influential for me. And this band, really, which, if you can't tell, is my favorite musical artist, is Pink Floyd. Definitely not some poppy disco thing. Time from Dark Side of the Moon from Pink Floyd is my most influential song of my life. Well, that's it. That's all 10. I hope all of you that have watched take a listen to all these songs and their albums and the artists. They're all definitely worth a listen and even some research on who these people were that came up with this music that influenced so many people in their own lives as well. I hope you enjoyed this. I plan to do something a little more different with the next series of Top 10 No One Cares About This list. I want to do more than just reviewing. I want to add maybe some little funny skits and stuff to it. We'll see how it goes. But anyway, thank you for watching. Have a great day, afternoon, night, and stay good.